All right, so now we need to talk about, now that we've talked about thermal energy being the total kinetic and potential energy in a whole system, and temperature being a measure of the kinetic energy in the system, and heat being the flow of that kinetic energy through a system, let's talk about how it flows. How is it transferred to other parts? Well, we've got three things here. We've got conduction, convection, and radiation. You can kind of see from this picture all you really need to know about the three, but I do want to explain them. Conduction, you see a man touching or a woman touching this pot handle. They can probably feel heat because they are literally touching the surface. Convection, you can see it's warmer down here on the bottom of the pot. It's closest to the heat source. And then as the water circulates and mixes with that hot and cold water, convection occurs. So think of like a sink full of cold water. If you turn hot water on, it won't get warm all immediately, but as it starts to circulate and the warmer particles circulate, it transfers that warmer energy to the colder water and it starts to develop a warm state and eventually it will become hot. Radiation is heat transfer that we do not touch. You do not touch a fire in order to feel it. You don't touch a heater in order to feel the heat from it. You stand away from it and you can feel that heat radiating in waves. So conduction, the objects have to be touching each other in order for them to be considered transferring energy based on or through conduction. So we have examples of where heat is transferred from particle to particle. One, you've got an egg in a pan. It is heating up because it is touching the hot pan. You've got your spoon in a cup of coffee. It is getting warm because it is in the coffee, the hot coffee, and because it is touching the hot cup. When your cold feet hit the tile floor, or the cold floor touches your warm foot, it's going to transfer heat energy to your feet or in the form of cold. It'll develop equilibrium. Your feet will either get colder, or if it's on a hot pavement, your feet will warm up because we know heat is transferred to equilibrium from the hotter object to the colder object. Convection is the heat transferred by circulation of liquids and gases. We see this in two places specifically. One, we see it in pots, in bodies of water. When heat circulates, it goes from like warm air, we know warm air, but the warm water at the bottom of the pot will circulate to the top. We see it in weather patterns where we have circulation of air and gases. We know the air is a gas. We see it inside homes when you turn on the air. The reason you feel that air or heat is because it is circulating in the room. All right, so thermal energy through convection, we've got three examples here. It can be a fluid. Remember, it can be a liquid or a gas. Anytime a liquid is transferring heat and flowing, or gas, we call that convection. So the soup is heated by the pan in convection. The hot soup rises, the cool soup falls. That's why you have to stir it usually to increase that heat. The pot handle's an insulator, so this pot is not going to be a very good conductor as far as it won't transfer heat by conduction. And heat energy is transferred to the pan by touching it through conduction. All right, so convection. When you look at the road in the summertime on a hot day, it might look blurry. This is convection because hot air on the road is directly rising and absorbing that heat from the road, and it's rising, and that circulation of gas right there at the road causes what we think of as mirage in the desert. All right, so we have three examples of convection. Like we said, a pot on a stove, liquid circulating, that's convection. We have warm air rising in a room and cool air falling and circulating, that is convection. And weather patterns, also convection. Gases circulating and transferring heat. All right, so we've got these same examples in a larger form so that you can see that liquid or gases, your air, circulating and transferring heat would be convection. All right, thermal energy transfer. If conduction deals with solids touching each other and convection deals with liquids and gases, then how does heat arrive to Earth? There is not very much matter in the 93 million miles between the sun and the Earth. So when heat is transferred via radiation, it will go through space or matter, and it is heat transfer by waves. It can travel, like we said, through space, which means there is no medium. There's no solid, liquid, or gas in order for that heat to grab onto. So it is transferred in waves, electromagnetic waves. We can see the sun's rays UV rays, well, specifically visible light from the sun. So when we look at this electromagnetic spectrum, we see all of these electromagnetic waves. We know that heat transfer by waves is going to be radiation. All right, so we can see that we have visible light right here in the middle that we see through Earth. We also have different forms of radiation, different forms of electromagnetic energy in the spectrum that can travel through the universe as waves. Those are all forms of radiation. Some are harmful, some are not. We'll get to that in the next unit. So radiation is heat transferred through matter or empty space by electromagnetic waves. So if you're feeling heat from a direct source because you are not touching it, it's not circulating the air, then we can consider that radiation. So a fire, you stand in front of the fire, you feel heat from the fire directly in front of you because of the waves that are being emitted from that fire. So these are all ways that there's heat transfer by radiation. Remember, if it's going to be convection, it's going to have to be circulating the air in the room. So if you're sitting in a room without a fireplace and you turn the heat on, you're talking about convection because it's heating the whole room up. So you can't see infrared radiation, but you can feel it as heat. Heat energy is transferred in a number of different ways. Remember, we've got convection, circulation of weather patterns and currents. We've got radiation, where the sun's rays are transferring heat and they don't need a medium, they don't need matter to grab onto. And then conduction, if you walk on the pavement or on the grass and it's a hot day, you can feel that heat in your feet through touching it. So just this again, we've got conduction, touching, convection, circulations of currents, and you've got radiation, heat transfer by waves. So look at these three examples, pause this, make sure you understand the definitions, what they mean, because we're going to look at this in a minute. So we're going to watch the next slide in present mode. All right. What you're going to see is that each of these examples are going to pop up with their correct type. I want you to do this and see if you guess them correctly. On slide 36, we have several examples here that you need to pause this and fill out. Once you are done filling yours out, come back and check your answers.